Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our showing of Gorillas in the Mist, 1988, the second film in our current miniseries, The Dark Continent Hollywood Style. Directed by Michael Apted, starring Sigourney Weaver as Diane Fossey, Brian Brown, and Julie Harris. The screenplay was adopted by Anna Hamilton Felon, Alex Shomatoff, and Harold P. Hayes from a story Felon wrote with Tab Murphy, and the score was written by Maurice Jarre. Gorillas in the Mist received generally positive reviews from the critics, with particular praise for Weaver's performance and the technical accomplishments of the movie. Much of the strength of her portrayal comes from her intelligent, robust delivery and the abandon with which she mimics the gorillas' behavior to gain their trust. However, others were frustrated by Weaver's on-screen characterization. Hal Hinson of the Washington Post said that at last Weaver may have found a part cut to her scale, but he also accused the filmmakers of toning down Fossey's unstable mental state, saying that she was more than merely eccentric. Roger Ebert said it is impossible to imagine a more appropriate choice for a role, but he also felt that the character was too distant from the audience and that her development and motives were unclear. But Ebert loved the scenes of the gorillas and the way live footage of the gorillas was seamlessly blended with those of actors outfitted in gorilla costumes. The New York Times reviewer said, noticing the similarities between Katharine Hepburn and Sigourney Weaver, like Katharine Hepburn, who might as well have played this part if Diane Fossey had lived earlier, Miss Weaver was made for such a role. Fine local actors were engaged to portray several roles, including that of Sembagare and the government official who chastises Fossey about her failure to understand the value of the gorilla trades to Rwanda's struggling economy. The film was also a financial success, earning over $62 million on a budget of $25 million. It was nominated for 5 Oscars, but won none. Weaver, however, won a Golden Globe for her performance as Fossey, and Maurice Jarre won a Golden Globe for his score. Jarre was noted for his use of electronic music, embracing synthesizers for use in many of his scores of the 1980s. Gorillas in the Mist differs from those works in its use of live orchestra plus African tribal instruments, and when the composer utilizes his full orchestra, the music really soars. The movie was shot in several locations in Kenya: the entire Ontario Science Centre in the North York area of Toronto, Ontario, Canada. That's the opening sequence. And the Olunga Conservation Area in the Parc National des Volcans, Rwanda, and in Rubengeri, Rwanda. Interiors were shot in Shepperton Studios, Shepperton, Surrey, England. Plot summary. The true story of American biologist Diane Fossey, who was inspired in the early 1960s by the great British anthropologist Dr. Louis Leakey to spend her life studying the mountain gorillas of Rwanda. She traveled to the Congo, where Leakey and his foundation equipped her to make contact with the gorillas and provided her with her longtime advisor and tracker, Sembagare. Fossey and Sembagare set out to find the gorillas, but they were displaced from their research site by soldiers linked to the ongoing Congo crisis. They were forced to move their entire operation over the border into Rwanda, where they were not fully accepted either by the local community or officials of the Rwandan government. The locals resented Fossey's pro-conservation objections to their poaching efforts, and the government viewed the animals as a source of income from tourism that could benefit the country's economy through the international zoo trade. Fossey considered abandoning her gorilla project, but her friend and mentor Rosamund Carr convinced her to remain in Africa and continue her studies. Fossey and her colleagues continued to observe the gorillas, studying their communications and social structure, eventually drawing worldwide attention to her work. She continued her research in Rwanda until December 25, 1985, when she was found dead in her cabin To this day, her killer remains unknown. Fun facts about the film. The baby gorillas which interacted with humans were actually not gorillas, but chimpanzees which were made up in blackface and given peaked fur hats to more closely resemble gorillas. This is because real baby gorillas would have put the filmmakers in danger from their adult parents. Up to this time, the gorilla suits used in films had obvious anatomical differences to real gorillas. For example, the wearer's real eyes were seen, forcing modification to the animal's face. For this film, Apted wanted to use real gorillas wherever possible, but some shots had to use the suits, so the differences showed. The costumers met the challenge and created gorilla suits good enough for Apted to do as he wished. Both Universal Studios and Warner Brothers were making biopics about Fosse at the time, and they were both trying simultaneously to gain access to the gorillas, leading the Rwandan government to refuse access to the animals until the two studios came to an agreement to merge the two films into one, which became Gorillas in the Mist. The character of Sembagare is based on Rosamond Carr's houseboy, Sembagare Mumyanbaniza, who set up the Imbabazi orphanage with her in 1994 to house refugees from the Rwandan genocide. More about this when we screen Hotel Rwanda in a couple of weeks. For many reasons, Apted's crew kept their distance from the gorillas while not filming them. One day, as they were preparing to shoot a scene, the actors and crew were hanging around, paying little attention to a stuntman who climbed into his gorilla suit, which was extremely lifelike, even featuring internal forearm extensors. The scene featured a charging gorilla. That required the stuntman to run on all fours, using his ungainly arm extenders. Since he was dressed and ready, the stuntman performed a dry run charge, but no one had paid any attention to him until that moment, so that when he performed it, he frightened the cast and crew, causing several of them to flee, since they thought a real gorilla was actually lunging at them. In the scene where Diane offers a Snickers bar to a young child, it's obvious by the way the wrapper tears that it's made of plastic. In 1966, these wrappers were actually made of paper. In the scene where Diane drives her Land Rover to see the mountains, the vehicle used is a Series 3 Land Rover, which first went into production in 1972. In 1966, the vehicle in production was the Series 2 Land Rover, which sported a wire grille and inset headlights, as opposed to the Series 3, which had a plastic grille and light in the wings, as seen in this film. It's a goof. The scenes in which Diane orchestrated the mock hanging of the poacher and set fire to the poacher's huts are both fictitious. But Diane did make many enemies among the gorilla poachers, who hunted the animals for their hands, feet, and head as trophies for the tourist trade, and among government officials who opposed her increasingly violent opposition to the poachers. Note Rosamond Carr's stunning English garden, and the work of Rick Baker, a makeup artist who specializes in simian features. Things to look for. Can you tell the difference between the real gorillas and the actors wearing gorilla suits? Can you spot the baby chimps masquerading as baby mountain gorillas? Note Weaver's resemblance to Katharine Hepburn in The African Queen. Rosamond Carr's stunning English garden. Can you spot Rick Baker's work creating gorilla faces for the actors? Rwanda's gorgeous mountain scenery. Diane's Land Rover. Maurice Jarre's award-winning score, employing a traditional orchestra, synthesizers, and African tribal instruments. The scenes in which Diane goes after the poachers and burns down their huts. Watch for the performances of the actors who play Sembagare and the chiding government official, and any and all scenes with the gorillas. Now it's time to view Gorillas in the Mist. Sit back, settle down. Please remember, it may take a few minutes for the film to roll. Enjoy.